wishing to speak must register and submit the registration slip to the zoning administrator to my right. Following the hearing, we will conduct our monthly business meeting, at which time we will vote on the applications. You may stay and hear how the applications are decided, or you may leave following the hearing. The applicant and the town board will be sent a copy of tonight's decisions. Any other person wishing to receive a copy of a decision can sign the sheet on the table at the front of the room. Those of you wishing immediate knowledge of the outcome of these proceedings may call the Waushara County Zoning Office tomorrow morning. The procedures will be as follows. After each applicant is read, number one, their applicant, their agent or representative will be asked to present their application, followed by questions from the committee. Then all correspondence will be read. Then others in favor will have a chance to speak. Anyone objecting will have a chance to speak. I will then ask a summary of the committee's field observations and staff comments. Finally, the applicant will be allowed a chance for a short rebuttal if they wish. Anyone wishing to speak, use the microphone, state your name, and direct your comments to the committee. I ask that all testimony be kept brief, no more than 5 minutes, and to the point. If you are testifying as a nearby landowner, please tell us where your property is located relative to the subject's property. Tonight's hearing will be recorded, and the recording will become part of the record. Comments that are based on hearsay or secondhand information, as well as slanderous or prejudicial remarks, will be ruled out of order. The committee has looked at all the properties and recorded with their reflect their observations. Any person affected by an administrative decision of the committee has 10 days of the filing of tonight's decision to make an appeal. Such appeals are heard by the Board of Adjustments. Information and applications are available from the zoning office. The county assumes no liability and makes no warranty to legality, and construction commenced prior to the expiration of the 10-day period. I will now introduce the committee. To my far left, Russell Heisey.
Question, sir?
No.
You read two categories. There was a third category, neither for nor against, but wish to speak.
That's all been read in here, sir. Yep.
You read only two categories. The third category is wish to speak, neither for nor against. That's the category I signed.
We can go back and play it.
The yellow sheet.
I'm only reading what's on this here that I've read for the last 17 years. So,
Well, you'll be given a chance.
You'll be given a chance,
to speak. I've got your form.
Okay, thank you.
Russell Heisey, Mike Kapp, Bob Wadle, Todd Whaler, zoning administrator. My name is Mark Kirshner. First application we have tonight is the text amendments. Text amendments are amendments that are being proposed to Chapter 8 of the Building Code and Mechanical Code for Waushara County, Wisconsin, which would define a primitive rural hunting cabin. The second amendment that is being proposed tonight is an amendment being proposed to Chapter 22 of the Health and Sanitation Code for Waushara County. The third amendment that is being proposed tonight to Chapter 42 of the Subdivision Code for Waushara County. The fourth amendment being tonight is an amendment being proposed to Chapter 54 of the Utilities Code, and several other miscellaneous amendments are being proposed to Chapter 58 of the Zoning Code for Waushara County. Is there anyone here that has any questions on the text amendments? I don't think any of you are here for that.
Excuse me. We do have two people that wish to speak.
Okay.
And actually, nobody signed the, oh, I'm sorry, CJ Young? I apologize.
Hello, my name is CJ Young, Town Chairman for the Town of Aurora. As I went through the zoning and being a fairly new chairman, I read through this and just had basically questions for you as to, you know, in Chapter 8 about the rural hunting code, how we came up with 80 acres. You know, most parcels have to be, larger than 40.
Correct.
Most parcels are just 40, if not under, and it seems very restrictive to having allowing someone to build a rural hunting cabin with, you know, pretty much absolutely no infrastructure inside it. That's, you know, I guess my question is why not 35 or?
Do you mind if I?
Go ahead.
The 40 acres is a result of meetings that we've had with the Department of Safety and Professional Services, DSPS, Department of Natural Resources, also various other communities throughout. I'm sure you're probably part of Google Groups, you know, which is basically an organization. It's part of the WCCA, which is the Wisconsin Code, and Wisconsin County Code Administration. So we reached out to a number of various agencies, entities, and came up with that. And the reason for that is typically, you know, we want our hunting to be done on large parcels of large tracts of land. It's something that we're trying to restrict as much as possible because, you know, and you've probably had that same situation, the primitive hunt cabins turn into sometimes permanent residences for some people. So we're trying to restrict them as best we can. We've gone round and round in terms of the language, the verbiage, the definition of primitive hunt cabins, and everything we feel now, based upon corporate counsel's review, is we've got something that's consistent with the most recent budget bill that was Act 59 that was just proposed or just approved. And we feel we have something now that, you know, that we can more or less regulate. And that's basically the genesis and where we're at.
So what's your, because this is the first, when I got this in the mail, it's the first I ever seen about it or heard about it. As I look, my question to you then is, if someone wanted to build on a 40-acre tract, their hunting cabin, they could have, if they applied for a building permit, then they'd be allowed to, correct? Because a building permit would, and they were going to put electricity in it.
Correct. But then we would treat that as a residence.
As a residence, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they're, basically they just have to apply under a different zoning area.
Absolutely.
Or,
Yep.
would you like me to go on to my next one, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other question I had was under the raise permits and debris. I guess I'd like a better definition, because as we look at these rural townships, you take a farmstead, if that has to be all the concrete from a silo building and a old barn, and, you know, throw in a couple small bin foundations, that's going to get awfully pricey to haul out. And when you got concrete that's made out of sand and limestone, majority of it, what's the difference if it gets buried there or not?
Well, and once again, this was something that was brought up by our building inspector, and also as a result of us constantly tracking down, you know, more or less violators of leaving trash and debris on premises, and then we end up citing them, you know, for unsightly premises not meeting our codes. And this was one way that we felt that through a raising permit, where we can actually control it, we can regulate it, and we can ensure that it's properly disposed of. Now, it's not to say that you can't bury it on your property. It's just that you would have to clearly demonstrate that you're not going to interfere with any potential, you know, drainage and that into navigable waters and that are regulated by the DNR, because we've had those situations occur before. But it's not to say that it can't properly, you know, some concrete and things like that, even the DNR allows you to properly dispose of and bury.
Okay. What is the cost of the raise permit? Have you set a number on that?
That I don't know. I'd say I don't have that right now. If you want, we can get with John Siebert in the morning, and we can check on that. I don't know if a permit fee has been established, because right now these are they're being proposed.
Okay, that well covers it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Next one. Or do you have both? Or
Yep.
both of them?
Yeah. CJ, I've got a couple here.
We got them covered.
You got 'em?
Okay, good.
Just wanted to make sure that you had.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Staff comments.
Yep. Every year, we review and evaluate our codes to determine whether changes are required and/or are necessary based upon recent legislation or just general housekeeping. This winter, we once again conducted this process and revised our codes accordingly. Probably the most sweeping changes came about as part of the most recent budget bill, and also recent legislation passed in November of 2017 with Act 67, which is also known as the Property Rights Bill. The amendments that you have before you are a result of numerous meetings and discussions with various agencies and departments, as well as our corporate counsel, to ensure that all codes are current with state law. Few of the text amendments contained herein have already gone through the respective committee for review, as well as the January Planning and Zoning Committee business meeting, with recommendation for public hearing at this meeting tonight. If these amendments are approved by the committee, they will then go to the County Board of Supervisors for adoption at one of their upcoming regular business meetings. I did distribute a couple more pages. It was actually just some fine tweaking that we had to do based upon further meetings with DSPS, as well as corporate counsel. And that's
Okay.
all I've got.
Okay. Was there anything else that you had, Si? No. Okay, that concludes the text amendments, which will be voted on later. The next application that we have tonight is a zone change. Charles A. Seward, Madison, Wisconsin, has made application for a zone change in accordance with sections 58-131 through 138, 58-451, 58-481, 58-541 of the Waushara County Zoning Code from an AG General Agricultural to an RS-20 Residential Single Family and an AR Agricultural Residential for the purpose of creating 6 lots ranging in size from .53 to 1.26 acres, and an existing lot being .61 acres to be zoned RS-20, and one parcel to be approximately 7.12 acres to be zoned AR. Divisions constructing a major subdivision and county preliminary plat will be required, followed by the state plat. Location, a northerly approximate 8.45 acre portion to be zoned RS-20 residential single family, lying approximately 735 feet north and east of Cree Avenue, and the remaining southerly 7.12 acres to be zoned AR agricultural residential, except lot 1 of a certified survey map number 3982, the entire area being approximately 15.27 acres, being part of the government lot 8, including part of the land vacated in Hills Lake subdivision. Lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 of certified survey map number 6485, section 8, Town 18 North, Range 11 East, Town of Marion, Cree Avenue. Please don't ask me to read that again. Would the applicant come forward, please? Would you state your name for the record?
Charles Seward.
Tell us what you want to do out there, Chuck.
Well, about 20 years ago, we visited the area and bought a lot on Spring Lake and built a home to retire to. And then about 7 years ago, we found that Mrs. Pludeman was selling off the 15 and a half acres after her husband died young. We bought the property with the understanding that we could subdivide it into a 4-lot CSM. We did so this past year, this past spring, I believe it was. And we had several people asking us if we would consider selling off some lots. We listed 2 of the properties that are south of the original Pludeman home that Charles Pludeman still owns in the middle of that 15 and a half acres. We found that no one wanted a 600-foot long driveway to their lots all the way to Cree. So we moved to an agreement with Amy's help. We moved to the agreement of being able to sell the lots 1 and 2 to people who wanted to build year-round residence, with the understanding that I would install a road that was built to the town of Marion's specification and Waushara County specifications, and that would be done by October of 2018. We proceeded to get bids. We contracted to get the road built. We have completed the road build. We have my understanding that the town of Marion has, through resolution 2017-4, has accepted ownership of the road. I'm not sure exactly the last item that they need to do for that to be of record. And our intention is to, with the new subdivision, have 6 new lots, 2 of which have sold that were in the existing CSM. 6 new lots on the water. The remainder of the lots are over, the remainder of the lots are between, I think, 0.9 and 1.2 acres. And then the balance of the AR, which is, I think, about 7.2 acres, 7.1 acres, something like that. We are going to, our intention is, I shouldn't say we're going to, our intention is to, on the preliminary plat, divide that into 7 1+ acre lots that can stay in the AR zoning. I think the most important thing here is that the changing of the of this 15.5 acres is exactly what the town of Marion and the Waushara County has as what they look to do in their comprehensive plan 2025. In here it shows that they want RS20 or residential along the shoreline and residential off of the shoreline. So this is in keeping with what it appears that the town of Marion and Waushara County want. That's it.
Committee questions? Mike?
Do you know where all the lot lines are?
Yes, sir.
Have you contacted the existing landowners within the zone change area?
In the zone change area.
Right, where you're adding lots and
Well, all of the neighbors to the east, the 5 neighbors to the east, Guy Lapine, Cal Van Beek, Brad McKenzie, the new people who just moved in a couple weeks ago, and Jeff Badke, yes, all those people. Charles Pludeman,
Richard Klein.
And the Vienendals are the neighbors that I touch.
are all landowners agreeable to the proposed zone change?
I would say that I know of one person who isn't. That's all I would know. Everybody else that I talk to thinks it's in keeping with what the town wants to do. They all love the fact that they have a road that they can get emergency services, school buses, ambulance, first responders. And I believe that several of those people have sent letters to the zoning office stating that.
Lots in this area are served by municipal sewer. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Are any deed restrictions planned?
I haven't gotten that far in the preliminary plat. You're talking about down the road. I haven't even gotten that far.
Is this zoning consistent with the surrounding land uses?
Yes, yes. In fact, I was asked by zoning to ask Mr. Pluteman if he would join or add his name and his property to the zone change application, and he did. I was asked to reach out to Mr. Klein. I was unable to reach him. I was asked to, I think that was it.
Have you reviewed this proposal with the town board?
Which proposal is that, sir?
Changing the lots around, changing the,
Doing this whole project, have you talked to the town board about this?
Gary Waleko?
Yeah, he's
Oh.
town chairman. Yeah.
Okay. I've met with Gary on site, telling him why we wanted to put the road in. Most all the conversations had to do with where the first time I met with Gary, I showed him the existing CSM, and I gave him a 6-lot on water plat. Yes. So yes, he has that.
So you have reviewed this with the town board, so the town board is aware of what you want to do out there, making these lots. You put the road in, of course, you've already taken care of that.
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead, Mike, pardon me.
are you aware of the platting requirements that will be necessary?
Section 4246. Yes, sir.
If an approval is granted, when would the preliminary plat of the subdivision be prepared and recorded?
We are hoping to have it to Todd and Amy for the April calendar. So whatever the deadline is for the April calendar. What is that? Excuse me.
I think it's March 14th.
March 14th. Yes.
Are you aware of the uniform property addressing?
Only that I don't have any control over it.
Do you plan on selling or transferring the ownership of these lots soon? Or is this put off for distance, or?
No, they're lots 1 and 2 of the existing CSM have been sold and are on the tax record as being owned by people other than myself and my wife, the Junos and Nancy Malloy. So does that answer that? Okay.
We note that there are 2 existing lots with zone change boundary. How is access going to be provided to these 2 lots?
I know of one lot by Mr. Klein. Which is the other lot, sir?
I'm not
Pluteman's.
Oh, okay. I believe the preliminary plat shows that we have a road roadway in place that you saw on site yesterday that goes straight north out of the cul-de-sac, and that is for the lot north of Pluteman, and the curb cut is exactly where Mr. Pluteman will be going in, and he has access as a easement all the way up to his property. The second lot, the existing Mr. Klein's property, if you have the original map in front of you from the Little Hills subdivision from 1927, shows that you come in off of Cree all the way up Pine Street, what was called Pine Street, that was vacated by Mr. Pluteman in 96, I believe, and then goes west over to Mr. Klein's lot. There were originally about 45 lots in the Little Hills subdivision. Mr. Klein's was the sole remaining individual 50-foot by 300-foot lot remaining. It is quite apparent if you're on site, it was to me when I bought the property, and it's still today, that Mr. Klein, the road, Pine Street and Maple, were never improved. So it was vacated in 1996, and when that was vacated, Mr. Klein was given an easement to travel up Pine, which he could, but could never get over to his property on Maple. That is right through the thick of the trees. What was apparent to me is that Mr. Klein has been coming up Pine far enough to hit the overhead power, which is basically where you parked the vehicle yesterday, and has been going up the power line, which is our property. I never had any problem with that, or Mr. Klein and his family. He continued to use that. Again, I didn't have any problem. About a few months ago, I reached out to him to discuss ideas when I was working on, before we had the road design and the cul-de-sac designed. I reached out to him. We had a hard time connecting, but about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I sent a proposal to Mr. Klein saying, I propose that you vacate Pine, Maple, which you obviously haven't been able to get across to your property, and instead I give you an easement across my property, which is exactly where you've been going for the last 7 years that I've seen you on the property. So those are the two property owners and the easements. And they were both shown, I believe, on the correct, Todd?
A preliminary plat. Yep.
I'm sorry, the preliminary plat, yes.
There also appears to be a number of easements and vacated streets shown on the site plan. Have all existing easements been illustrated, and do you anticipate any new easements?
The first question again? Oh, have they been shown? Yes, yes, yes. 1, 2, there are three easements on it besides the easements for Silver Lake Sanitary, which wasn't shown on there. The gas company, which wasn't shown on there, that'll be on the preliminary plat that will be given to the zoning. And let's see, there is no electric easement on our property. Excuse me, there's no electric recorded easement on our property. There is an overhead power line from 100 years ago that goes right along the area where I was offering Mr. Klein his new easement, where he's been accessing his lot where he camps. New easements, no. There are beginning to be fewer easements.
All the affected properties in agreement with these easements?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you asking me if Mr. Pludeman has accepted his new easement?
Yeah.
Yes, he has accepted his new easement. Mr. Klein, I have not gotten a response from Mr. Klein to see if he wishes to accept his new easement. Have not been able to contact him. I've reached out, I think, 6 times via phone message, email, asking to discuss it, and I have not heard a response.
Have you looked at the constructability of each lot?
Absolutely. All of them require, all of the properties have well over the, at least the minimum or well over the minimum of 100-foot width at the building site. All of them have the 100-foot minimum at the water. All of them are, even with the wetland, the lot with the wetland, there is 100, appears to be, depending on what map you use, between 150 and 160 feet from the water to the wetland, which is sufficient to build. I mean, 75-foot setback, you still have 70 feet to build something.
So that Lot 5, which appears to have a limited area in which to build, that's not going
That's
to affect that?
no, sir, that's 150 to 160 foot from the water. Yeah.
Have you contacted the DNR regarding the existing wetland and construction of a driveway immediately adjacent to or through said wetland?
Absolutely. I have had no less than 3 dozen conversations and communications. I've applied for the permit. I've got the on-site soils done, got the wetland area marked by Tom Needland, the head of the state DNR. It is now in the hands of Sarah
Atkins.
Thank you. And I have received a letter, and I did not bring it. Did I give it to you and Amy? The letter from Sarah? Copied you with it? Yes, where it says that the bottom line is that, is it in the file? You received it last week, saying that based on I took away from that letter that I asked Sarah to get to you, where was if I pay the $700 fee for the permit, if anybody wanted to pay the $700 fee for a permit to construct a drive or to disturb the wetland, that there, just as long as it was kept to a minimum, this is paraphrasing, that there's, I think the letter stated that there's no reason why, she saw no reason, and she's the head of that entire department for the state, she said she saw no reason why that permit wouldn't be granted. Okay, thank you.
With regard to the construction of the proposed public road, are you aware of the construction and road naming requirements?
Yes, that I had to name it.
I'm guessing the town approved it and all, the name?
Yes, actually, the town thought that it had to go to a committee for the naming or the numbering for emergency vehicles for response, and I spoke with somebody, I spoke with Zach, I believe his name is, who's also the tax lister, said that they discussed it at the meeting, and that it was okay with them, just as long as it was okay with the town.
Have you contacted the town and/or county regarding acceptance and dedication of this roadway?
Sir?
Evidently.
Yes. And they have adopted it.
Yep.
Are you planning on any new driveways or changes to the existing driveways?
Existing driveways. Okay, where the road, the gravel road, the dirt road that's been there, that's been part of the Pluteman property, that was the Pine Street that was never improved, so it was vacated in the '96. That you come off of Cree north for about 600 feet. The people, the 5 residents, Lapines, Van Beeks, Mackenzie, I don't know the new people's name, and Badkeys there, off to the right, they also had an easement to use that gravel road. When we finished the road, or while the road was being finished, the town chairman came out and said, there's one thing I want you to do, and that is I want you to put the connection between their drive-off at where the road bends, and we did that, and he's been plowing it.
Are there any future development plans for the larger balance of the property to be zoned AR?
Yes. 7 1+ acre lots, which is in keeping with the Comprehensive Plan 2025 for Town of Marion. Yes, sir.
Are you aware of the regulations prohibiting pyramiding, which would provide access to public bodies of water from backlot development?
Yes, Todd and Amy have explained that to me.
And I remember the area very well. When I was 12 years old, I delivered the Milwaukee Journal on Sunday mornings back in that area.
You had one customer.
No, we had 3 of them back in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Any other committee questions? Russell? Robert? No. Okay. Thank you. Okay, correspondence?
We have a number of letters that have come into us. The first is from Sarah Atkins, from the DNR. It states, "I have no issues or concerns with the zone change. However, if Mr. Seward is planning to fill any of the wetlands, a wetlands disturbance permit will be required from us." That was sent on Thursday, February 8th of 2018. Second letter is from Charles Pluteman, and this is dated February 12th, received February 12th. To the committee regarding the application of by Charles Seward to change the zoning on property informally described as Little Hills Lake Estates, I would like to express my support for this zoning change. I agree with the county that it is no longer appropriate to keep this property zoned AG, and I have also requested that the zoning on my parcel, in parentheses N1674 20th Road, parcel number 016-00858-1210, which lies within Little Hills Lakes Estates, be changed from the present AG to RS20. My grandfather began purchasing property around Little Hills Lakes in 1947 and recall him commenting that back in the day there were still cattle grazing on the upper area away from the lake. AG zoning was certainly appropriate at that time. My mother has sold her property to Mr. Seward. The new development initiated by Seward will result in many changes on our side of the lake. Some of the changes have been unexpected, but I have found Mr. Seward to always be transparent in his communication with me. He has made every attempt to be accommodating, has respected my easement, and generally been a good neighbor. I urge the committee to approve the requested change in zoning. Regards, Charles Pluteman. The next letter, also dated February 12th and received February 12th, to the zoning committee regarding the desire by Charles Seward to change the zoning on the property he and his wife own on the west side of Little Hills Lake. We would like to express our support of this request for change. As owners of property on Little Hills Lake, we have found that Chuck Seward, has been very proactive on both improving and developing the land his family now owns on Little Hills. I have talked with Chuck in person on a number of occasions and found him to be honest and trustworthy. The recent upgrade of an actual blacktop road in the 20th Road area has been a great improvement. Chuck went above and beyond in keeping us, and in parentheses, one of the neighbors, informed of the timing of and the various steps involved with his improvement and development process. From what we can determine from the change request made and the research we have done, the proposed change would more appropriately classify the land in question and appears to be somewhat overdue, as the zoning and use of the land decades ago no longer seems as appropriate or accurate as it was several years back. Due to our confidence in Chuck's desire and ability to do things professionally and considerately, and in a very open and communicative manner, we would certainly suggest the committee strongly consider supporting the requested changes to the zoning in that area. Respectfully and sincerely, Calvin Van Beek and Cynthia Van Beek. A letter dated February 13th, received February 13th, Dear Waushara County Planning and Zoning Committee. As a longtime resident on Cree Avenue across from the property being considered by the committee for changing zoning designation, we wish to acknowledge several concerns with this possible subdivision. Number one, we understand that there exists no plat of survey on file by the subdividing party. We hope this is completed and offered for study prior to any consideration by the committee. Number two, there are several existing easements and access roads between former property owners that have not been legally addressed. Number three, a portion of the property is designated as WDNR wetland set aside as a natural resource. It is concerned that the state has not been notified. While we are very confident that the committee will follow proper procedure on any request by the subdividing party, it is a concern that it is done in harmony with the existing property owners on Little Hills Lake and Deer Lake. Thank you for your consideration and expertise. Deborah Carlson Kudla, Susan Carlson, and Mike Kudla. Another letter, February 13th, received February 13th to the Planning and Zoning Committee. We are writing in support of Chuck Siewert's application for a zoning change from AG to residential for his property at Little Hills. As homeowners adjacent to the property on Cree, we are pleased to see the ongoing improvements, especially the new road that Chuck has created and in the process of dedicating to the town of Marion. As a first responder, I see the enormous benefits to the entire neighborhood of now having a road capable of safely supporting fire and ambulance vehicles on a year-round basis. We have nothing but good feelings about who Chuck is and what he is doing at Little Hills. Sincerely, Lee Weiss and Jaron Hyatt. Another letter dated February 13th, received February 13th. Amy and Todd, please consider the following as a letter of support for the proposed zoning change for Little Hills Lake Estates. To the committee. Committee members, I will not be able to attend the committee meeting February 15th, therefore I am writing to inform you that I support approval of the zoning change Mr. Siewert has proposed. I understand this change is necessary to facilitate the dedication of the new road that Mr. Siewert has constructed the town of Marion. I am an owner of one of the parcels the new road now services, and I'm hopeful this change is approved so that the road dedication may be completed. Thank you for your consideration. Best regards, Brad McKenzie. Another letter dated February 14th to Waushara County Land Conservation and Property Zoning Committee. As with anything in life, change brings out fear and concerns in all of us. This proposed zoning change is no different. Please understand that my concerns are only to make sure the project is done correctly and within the guidelines of zoning regulations. Looking over the map of the proposed changes of the property in question, the first thing I notice is every proposed lot, with the exception of Lot 1, has some sort of easement attached to it. Why? Is the property being divided properly? It makes no sense that every lot needs an easement to enter and leave the property. As I understand it, the two sold lots are now non-conforming lots currently zoned AG. This was brought on by the developer himself by the way he positioned his road. The other thing I noticed on the map was the approximate location of wetlands. The wording approximate leads me to think that the location of the wetlands is open for debate. My opinion is it's not, since the developer has talked about backlots. All plans and plats should be submitted to the committee so that they can make their decision based on facts, not conjecture or hearsay. I urge the committee to table this decision until all the proper documents that they need to make a well-informed decision have been submitted. The committee should also be aware that this decision could completely change the dynamics of Little Hills Lake as a result of more piers, rafts, and of course, boats, causing those of us who have enjoyed and revered the lake for decades the way it is to have to change. Respectfully submitted, Jim Statton. February 14th letter. I, Nancy Malloy, am in favor of the rezoning of Coolaway Road on Hills Lake pertaining to my property. Sincerely, Nancy Malloy. Letter dated February 15th to the Waushara County Zoning. As a property owner in neighboring Deer Lake, it has come to my attention that proposal to rezone and subdivide the property on Little Hills Lake is coming before the zoning board. I have a few concerns in regard to this proposal. The proposed preliminary layout map is not accurate as far as the size of the wetlands on 5 and 6. An aerial photo shows the wetland in Lot 6 to cover almost the entire width of the lot, thus restricting any driveway construction through a wetland area. An on-site visit will show that for Lot 6, the wetland abuts the private property of others to the west, thus prohibiting a driveway to the lake side of the lot without filling in a wetland. If one looks at the vegetation growing around the wetland, one can see where the high water mark on the wetland is and how much of a difference there is between the map and the actual wetland. Also, there appears to be no buildable area on the lake for lots 5 and 6, as there is a small narrow ridge between the wetland and the lake. It does appear a building would be able to meet the 75-foot high water mark setback from the lake and also the wetland area. The map does not show accurately how close the wetland comes to the lake with a narrow wooded ridge between the two. Number 2, the Siewert property is in the watershed area of Deer Lake, as researched and published by University of Wisconsin Stevens Point, Lake Research, Lake Grant, and Deer Lake Study. There is no mention of this on the map. there is no mention on this map of the culvert that runs underneath Cree Road and runs through the yard of the Kudla property on Deer Lake. Any change to Lot 6 in regards to driveway construction or other alterations to the property could alter the flow of storm waters either into Kudla Yard and into Deer Lake, or put more runoff waters into the wetland area on lots 5 and 6. Number 3, the preliminary layout map shows Maple Street as being vacated. I don't believe this is correct, as the electric utility surveyed and used Maple Street last year as an access to the Klein property. Number 4, question. Are these proposed lots 5 and 6 to be placed on Silver Lake Sanitation District sewer lines? How do you get sewer materials through the wetlands? If they can't hook up the sanitary district, where do the septic systems go with small lots, wetlands, and the lake so close by? In my opinion, any changes to zoning changes on the basis of the preliminary lot layout map would not be good public policy based on the fluidity of the property owner's decision-making process allowed with an unrecorded plat. Thank you, Kevin Fitzgerald. And that's all we have for
That's all the
correspondence. Thank you.
Okay. Slips, anyone in favor to speak in favor of?
Is there a Carl Veendendahl?
I'll pass until a couple other people speak.
Okay. Thomas A. DeMeyer?
Well, thank you for hearing me. I've been a resident on Little Hills directly across the lake from this applicant's proposal here since '93. That area, which was under Land Conservancy at the time, and I guess that's recently expired, has been a tremendous asset to the lake. It's really the only natural shoreline that we have there anymore. If you look at the lake map that the Sand Hills company did for our lake along that shore, they color coded the lake shore as to the promoting the health of any lake. But that's the longest stretch of natural shoreline on the lake. The applicant came to one of our board meetings. I'm a member of the board on Little Hills, shortly after he bought it, and introduced himself as an environmentalist, that he bought the property, that he didn't plan on developing it, even though he could. I thought that was kind of questionable at the time, because my own mind, I've been around long enough to talk to enough people. If somebody introduces themselves that way, they're just trying to get you ready for it. And and now here it is. The lake shore that he's talking about, really the only lots that really wouldn't do any damage to the lake are the ones that he's already sold. The rest of them are in a steep area. I understand there's kettles in that area, wetlands. To get to those wetlands, they'd have to be destroyed. The lakeshore would be destroyed if there were homes on it. In other words, from an environmentalist standpoint, that whole section of the lake, several hundred feet, would be destroyed, as to the plan that I witnessed, that I saw. That's always been an area. I know these are things that are beyond our control. Eagles, ospreys, cormorants, deer, any number of animals has used that area and has been an attraction to the lake as long as I've lived there. And this is all going to be destroyed. But the applicant has the right to do that. My concern is that I think we as a lake board were deceived when we first met him. I think that the township has been deceived. I think that there is deception going on here as far as the zoning committee is concerned, and I think there's been deception with the DNR. And I would suggest that before you vote on anything as far as approving this land use is concerned, is to get your tape measures out and get accurate maps and make sure that what is proposed is what's going to happen. This is a very sensitive land area. In my opinion, it should never be developed. I wish I had the money to buy it. I'd have left it just the same as it is, but I can't do that.
Okay.
But be careful.
All right, thank you.
Yep. There you go. Is there a Neil Nett who would like to speak for informational only? Okay. Yep. Randy Jankik? Janicek, I apologize. Would like to speak for informational only.
I'm actually a neighbor on the east side of the bay in Little Hills Lake and have been up there for 45 years now. So my real question really is to the zoning committee that in trying to understand what's going on around the lake, there's a number of different plans that have been proposed and a number of different changes, including the road being added. The 2 lots that have been sold went from over an acre now down to a non-conforming lot and requiring the zoning changes. So my question really is, if things on this proposed plot plan aren't accurate, what happens going backwards? I mean, is it customary to approve a zoning change without having all the accurate information on the plan?
And I would say yes. I mean, at the time that you typically do a rezoning such as this for a subdivision, you're always going to get tweaking, and that at the time of the final plat of subdivision, lot lines adjusting here and there based upon conditions. And I'll speak later about the concerns. Believe me, we have just as many concerns as you have. We've relayed those on to Mr. Seward, and we've also relayed those on to the existing landowners within that, such as Mr. Klein here. But, you know, tweaking of the lot lines is not uncommon. You know, what we're looking at here is a rezoning that's consistent with the surrounding land uses, consistent with the future land use plan of the town of Marion. The lot sizes are much larger than what would be normally allowed under the RS-20 zoning. So we do look at a number of different factors. But with regard to, you know, some minor adjustments here and there, you know, we always have minor adjustments. We have some serious concerns too, things that need to be addressed, and I'm going to outline those a little bit later.
Okay, very good. That's really my point, is making sure that all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed prior to a change, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there a Richard Klein that would like to speak for information only?
Yes, sir.
Evening. Thank you for having me here. Had it not been for the notification from the zoning office, I may not have known about this, because although Mr. Seward says he had trouble contacting me about this or about signing on to the petition, this is a list of copied emails. I have text messages on my phone, and we've been in touch. He is correct that for the past at least several weeks I have not been responding verbally to his contacts. However, I also have emails that I have contacted him, and basically our conversation kind of ended when I told him I'd retained counsel. Because, well, a little bit about my history. This piece of land, which I am the one in the middle of the land, has been in my family for 89 years. My uncle bought it in 1929, and the market crashed, and nothing happened. And Grandpa Pluteman, Dr. Pluteman, the first Pluteman, bought up the land, everything but mine, and the 2 lots that belonged to the Wienendahls. I had a good relationship with them. I met the grandma picking berries in the woods, and went and visited her, and she said, well, Mr. Klein, you know you're driving across our property to get to your property. That's the power line road. I said, I guess I am, ma'am. I suppose you want me to cut Maple Street? And she said, no. Keep driving along that road. And that's the way it's been ever since with her son, Dr. Pluterman, Dr. Paul Pluterman, and with her son, Charles. We've had a good relationship. So that access along there has been my access. I understand that this is a zoning meeting to hear about zoning change. And so that most of my concerns probably will come out in the plat hearing where the details really come out. And so I'm not speaking for or against it like any, I hate to say it, older person, but I'm becoming one, thank God. We'd like things to be the way they were, but we know they can't. And I understand that why the board is doing this in keeping it like the other zoning around the lake. I understand that. My concerns are that things be done within the law, properly, and with concern for the land. I mean, Mr. Seward told me when he bought it, he was buying it for his family for a retreat and was going to build on the high land, and whatever has come about is this. This I obtained by going to the zoning meeting. My easements are in yellow. I don't know if they stand out enough, but they're strong easements written by Joan Olson, who is probably someone you're familiar with if you're from around here, been practicing a long time. My lawyers looked at those easements, and they're strong easements that guarantee me access. Mr. Seward has offered me a 10-foot wide easement in exchange for giving up my 40 feet by 350 feet Maple Street easement, and in order to give up my lake access easement, 50 foot wide by 300 and some feet long, and I have this here if you'd like to see it, but for cutting my dead wood on my land and hauling it away. And when that happened, I realized there was really probably not much for him and I to talk about at this time. So my lawyer will be handling my easement complaints or concerns. And for that reason, I would say that if there is a March plat meeting, the plat will not, I doubt if it can happen until I'm satisfied on my easements. I will not give up my lake access. And in fact, I question whether Mr. Seward actually has the right to sell that land referred to as the Commons in the old surveys. Think of Boston Commons. I don't think anyone could sell that. I don't believe he can sell the Commons. And at any rate, my easement is 50 feet wide over and across, ingress and egress on that land. And I will not surrender that, no matter how many trees he wants to cut down and haul away for me. Now, as far as my easement on Maple Street, my easement reads, an easement for ingress and egress over and across the land referred to as Maple Street. Notice that Maple Street is first. I'm not forced to come in on Pine and then enter Maple Street. I'm also, in addition, the grantee is given the right to ingress and egress over and across the land referred to as on said plat as Commons, and will have access to Hills Lake. The easement rights as conveyed herein shall run with the land owned by the grantee, specifically Lot 27. At that time it was Lot 27 when the plat was vacated.
Pardon me, this 50-foot access that you were talking about before, that's the one that goes right down to the lake.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I got here.
Right.
Thank you.
And that's the one I referred to, ingress and egress over and across. As I said, I mean, I understand. I don't like this. I don't want this. But I understand that time marches on. And it is in keeping with the zoning of the property around the lake. I understand that. But I can tell you, there are some issues that'll have to be resolved before this will go forward in any way reflecting this preliminary plat. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for hearing me. I'm sure there's going to be things that I'll think of when I sit down. But I understand what you're doing. I understand why this will most likely pass. But I'll see you again when the plat hearing happens, whenever that is. But I doubt it'll be in March.
We'll be a little older.
Be a little older. Thank you. Any questions for me?
No, you're fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one gentleman, Carl Veendendahl, that would like to speak in opposition.
Carl Veendendahl. I'd like to read a letter that was sent to Amy addressing the committee members today, which you may or may not have received because it was sent at 4:20 by Ernie Bear. He's a resident on Deer Lake. Committee members, regarding the above referenced application, I respectfully ask your consideration of the following. Signs have been posted on Cree Avenue for some time indicating the availability of lots on Hills Lake and the pending sale of same. One would assume that questions of zoning would have been addressed and resolved prior, in capitals, which you will see, to the listing and selling of lots. Further, it appears that several of the, quote, proposed, end quote, lots do not meet the 1 acre minimum requirement, which also brings into question whether perhaps the, quote, cart has gotten in front of the horse, end quote, on this entire project. I ask that Mr. Seward be made to account for his actions and held to the standard that any professional developer would be. I would suggest that his actions to this point do not manifest a diligent and professional adherence to order and compliance that should be required for any development, and, in particular, one that intends to permanently change undeveloped lakefront land. I am a firm believer in property rights, and Mr. Seward has the same rights as any property owner. I also believe that governing bodies have an obligation to ensure that development of any sort of benefit not only the developer, but also the surrounding property owners who are left to live with the results. I serve on a board similar to yours, and am acutely aware that I serve both sides equally in matters such as these. I respectfully ask the application before you be denied, and that Mr. Seward be required to resubmit an application that reflects full compliance with conditions you require for a development of this nature. Sincerely, Ernie Bear. That's in your email. I have a concern regarding another email that was disseminated by Mr. Seward, where he stated in the email that, and this is very troubling to me because, as Ernie pointed out, the cart before the horse, you know, was this a done deal prior to that road going in? I mean, that road going in is the result of why we are here. It created 2 non-conforming lots. Now, it says in the email that Town of Marion Chairman Gary Walenko and he met last year. Was it decided last year that this was going to be done? I think so. The road goes in. You know, maybe they said to themselves, hey, we'll deal with the rezoning later. Put the road in. That's very troubling. He doesn't have a plan, as everybody's pointing out here. Where's his plan? It's just not there. I'd like to see the plan. The road goes in. 2 non-conforming lots. We need to take a step back. How can we solve or make those 2 lots conforming? You need to ask yourself as a committee, how can we do this? How can we make those conforming as opposed to rezoning it? You know, if you have to take such drastic measures as, you know, tearing up that road so it gets to the 1 acre, you know, he did it. He's the one that created the problem why we're here. and he should be held accountable. Thank you.
Okay, staff comments?
All right. For the record, the committee has previously been furnished with a copy of the site plan and all pertinent data for this application, and had visited the property at the recent on-site on Wednesday, February 14th, 2018. With regard to the zoning, the county is divided up into numerous zoning classifications. A few of the broad categories include agricultural, residential, commercial, or industrial. In this particular instance, the applicant, Chuck Seward, is proposing to rezone an approximate 16-acre parcel of land to be known as Little Hills Estates from AG, General Agricultural, to RS20, Residential Single Family, and AR, Agricultural Residential, with the exception of one parcel that will remain AG. Now, it is the landowner's responsibility to provide the necessary information and demonstrate to the committee that the change in the underlying zoning is in keeping with the area and that the resultant lots will be good neighbors and remain in keeping with the existing land uses. Now, keep in mind that a zone change is a permanent change to the property, and that by changing the zone, you are likely changing not only the minimum lot size, but also what may be permitted on that property. Because of this, the permanent change, the review standards are quite high, and the applications for zone changes are reviewed by 3 bodies. The first step, which is being taken tonight, is a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Committee, which will then make a recommendation on this application. The recommendation will then go to the full County Board of Supervisors, and finally this proposal will go on to the Town Board. In order to change the zoning on the property, the application must be approved at all 3 levels of review, from committee to County Board to Town Board. Now, when the committee visited the property, they noted that each lot needs uniform property addressing. The town of Marion needs to take control and ownership of the roadway, that easements must be worked out with the neighbors at the time of the plat of subdivision, and that a wetland permit will be required on Lot 5 if there's any disturbance to said wetland. Staff has reviewed this application, has visited the site, and finds that the rezoning is consistent with the existing land uses, the surrounding land uses, and the future comprehensive plan for the town of Marion. We are therefore recommending approval of the rezoning subject to conditions listed within our report, and that any other conditions that may be specified by the committee. Now, if I could, I'd like to address just a couple of issues that has come up as a result of some of the testimony. First of all, with regard to the DNR. To date, the DNR has just done a determination that a wetland exists on that property. Before any filling or any demolition or destruction can be done to the wetland, a detailed wetland delineation, engineering drawings, and so forth will need to be submitted to the Department of Natural Resources, and that the owner or the person or the applicant must demonstrate that he has done everything in his power to avoid destroying the wetlands. This is something that we've written Chuck since then, and in our estimation, we don't believe that he's done everything in his powers to avoid possible destruction of the wetlands. Right now, the lot lines that exist on this preliminary plat they're just that. They're just dimensional lines shown on a drawing, which can very easily be tweaked or moved from one side to the other. So we too have concerns regarding the wetlands. Regarding the driveways, and that we have had a number of concerns regarding access easements, not only to the Pluteman lot, but also to Lot 3. I know there's concern regarding the number of easements, and actually in terms of ingress and access easements, ingress and egress easements, I apologize, we only have really 2 on the plat that are right now being shown. One is access, future access to Plutemans, and access to the Klein's property. So we also have concerns regarding a number of issues. There also, with regard to Maple Street has been vacated. However, we're sure that the utility easements most likely have not. At the time of final plat, or excuse me, preliminary plat, drawings will be disseminated to all the organizations, towns, utility companies, and everyone will have their say in terms of what utility easements must exist on that property, what's existing, and what needs to be put in based upon the potential development. The site plan limits, and that, keep in mind, we always, at the time of a rezoning, we've always put as a standard condition that the site plan must conform as best as possible to the limits of the rezoning. At this point in time, we believe that what is being presented by the applicant is consistent with the land uses. I've said it before, that right now, the lots that are being proposed within an RS-20 zoning classification, the lots that are being proposed are almost twice that of what would normally be allowed under an RS-20, which, like I say, is part of the future comprehensive plan as presented by the town of Marion and Waushara County. So we do have a number of concerns. We've got a number of issues to resolve before this will come back to the committee. A big one of which is, it has to do with the Kleins and the access easement out to the lake. These are issues that have to be resolved, and the plat will not go further in that until such time that they are taken care of. And that's all we basically have.
Okay, at this time, the applicant would have a chance to have 3 minutes to rebuttal.
Oh, sure. It wasn't rebuttal, it was just basically adding information to answer questions brought up by Mr. Benino and someone else who spoke. I can't remember their names right. As far as sewer, being able to hook up from the lots that are on the north end there, even though they're 500-600 feet away from Cree and from the cul-de-sac where the sewer is, I've gotten bids in from 2 different local companies, and there's no problem getting sewer hooked up. No problem at all. Around the wetland. Okay? The natural shoreline, to your point, sir, it is natural. It's beautiful. It's got to stay that way, or the new owners of that property will have problems with DNR and with you. I mean, that is out of my control. I don't think there's going to be much change, if anything. I am cleaning. I've talked to DNR. I've talked to Waushara County. I can't remember who Amy sent me to yesterday. I spoke with them, but about cleaning up some of the dead trees coming off the shore onto the ice, because cross-country skiers are hitting them, and actually they've taken to starting to trim them so they don't get hurt, snowmobilers and things like that. I plan on doing that this winter.
No. You have to address your comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
So I spoke with DNR again this morning, and we came up with a plan of how to do that. And I'd be glad to talk to I'm sorry.
You can talk to them outside this.
Okay,
meeting.
all right, thank you. What I think a lot of people don't understand, if they look at the history of what the CSM, the existing CSM, the 4-lot CSM, was 66 foot of frontage on Cree. I proceeded with listing and selling lots 1 and 2 of an existing CSM that was totally in compliance. The people who bought lots 1 and 2 asked me and agreed with me to taking on the burden of putting a road in over our property and their property at my expense. In exchange for that, they deeded back their part of the land that we used for the road, and that's what made lots 1 and 2 down below the acre to the RS-20. That's why we're here today, and also we're here today to change the zoning for all of the lakefront, because my understanding is that is what Waushara County wants to see as zoning for that area. That's it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing we have on the agenda here is the Waushara County Planning and Zoning Committee. Public notice is hereby given to the public hearing will be conducted in the Planning and Zoning Department on Thursday, February 15th, room 265, County Boardroom, Waushara County Courthouse. Wautoma, Wisconsin, to consider proposed amendments to the Waushara County 20-year comprehensive plan. The purpose of the public hearing is to accept the public comments on the proposed amendments. The Waushara County is requesting amendments to the future land use map and the language in the Waushara County Land Comprehensive Plan, Volumes 1 and 2, adopted by the Waushara County Board in December of 2009.
Okay. If you recall, back in February of 2017, Cristiano's Pizza filed an application to rezone a 350-foot by 500-foot portion of property off of the 13.6-acre land along State Route 21. They asked for rezoning from AG, General Agricultural, to General Commercial, and another smaller riparian parcel from AG, General Agricultural, to RS20, Residential Single Family. This rezoning was to establish construction of a future restaurant. This rezoning was viewed as an appropriate land use at that location and was ultimately approved by the board in June of 2017. Given the fact, however, that the commercial application was a slight deviation from the town's 20-year comprehensive plan, a modification to the plan is now necessary. As you are aware, the Waushara County adopted a 20-year land use plan back in December of 2009, and since that time, the Waushara County Land, Water, and Education Committee has periodically reviewed the plan, and when changes are necessary, and that they request that changes be made to the plan so that it accurately reflects actions taken by both local municipalities and the county. This has gone before the committee at their January meeting, and it was unanimously recommended to the Planning and Zoning Committee for public hearing. Staff has reviewed the plan and requested that this be approved and forwarded to the county board for formal amendment to the 20-year comprehensive plan.
Okay. All right, that concludes our applications for tonight. We will now approve the, I need an approval of the agenda in front of you.
So moved.
Motion made by Mike, seconded by Russell to approve the agenda. Any questions or discussion on it?